Dick O'Brien was in Virginia for 13 weeks of basic radio training, then was given the option to study business in Washington, D.C., where he studied mechanical engineering for 6 months. He was then transferred to the 35th Division of Canada, Nebraska, Missouri National Guard. Many citizens participated in the war effort by collecting metal rubber and donating blood.
I got out of 13 weeks basic training, they call it. They sent me to radio school, to Morse code, dot and dash, da-da-da-da, that's V for victory, SOS, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, that's the SOS call when the ship is in trouble. And I never used it in the service. So it was, they just didn't know where to put people. Because they said, well, let's send them to code school. But the Navy used it, but the Army never used it. But that didn't mean they didn't have to have school. So things were, kind of muddled, getting organized. And I hadn't quite finished radio school when a sergeant came to interview people, and he said, we have a college program. Would you like to go to the college program? And I said, well, can I study business? He said, sure, you can study anything you want. And I said, well, where is it? And he said, well, it's Georgetown, Washington, D.C. And my sister was working in Georgetown, my older sister, Connie, who's now 94, still living. And so I said, sure, I'd love to go to Georgetown. Well, I got up there, I got to the school, and I said, I want to major in business. And they said, you have 2 choices, Japanese or mechanical engineering. My assignment was to be an ammunition carrier for the machine guns, to carry the little boxes of ammunitions. And so when we went over to England, they called me in and said, First Sergeant said, we're transferring you to the 1st Platoon to be a radio operator for Lieutenant Jack Yost. And I said, well, I'd rather go into combat with the guys that I know. And they said, get over there, you've already been transferred. You didn't get much choice in the service. I met Jack Yost, nice guy, and he said, wherever I go, you're with me. And he says, right? I said, yeah, absolutely. He was a good guy. He was solid as a rock, from Kansas. I thought of him as an old guy. You saw his picture. Well, I was 19, he was 26. But he was a farmer, and he was smart, but his face was kind of weathered. He had a lot of sun and whatnot, so I didn't know his age. But anyway, when you're 19, you think someone 26 is pretty old anyway.
Eigene Arbeit, eigenen Fleiß, eigenen Entschlossenheit, eigenen Trotz, eigene Beharrlichkeit. War with Germany broke out.
Know how to chew gum. They never had gum, So he says, don't swallow, just chew. And then they would say, we used to get chocolate bars, but those were dark chocolate and kind of bitter, but and hard as a rock. But we didn't give those away because we would chop that up and make cocoa and add sugar and whatnot. But the kids would say chocolate and cigarettes. I didn't smoke, and But they, in our rations, they had like little a little pack of 4 cigarettes. So they'd say, cigarettes for Papa, and we'd say, well, what have you got to trade? Bread or cake or something like that. So, or wine, that was popular in France. So we would give them cigarettes. They didn't want money. They wanted the cigarettes. The cigarettes were, they could take those cigarettes and go to a baker and you know, get a couple loaves of bread, because there just were no American cigarettes around, you know. So it was like, it was better than money. When German artillery would fire, you hear the shell. And when the U.S. fires in back of us, ours was a lower velocity. It would go whoosh, going outgoing. And then ingoing was probably a 75 millimeter, and it would come in kind of screaming, a high pitch. So you soon learned, very soon, that one was high. It was going to go well over you. No need to duck, no need to get in the foxhole or anything. That one's going over there, that one's going over here. This one looks like it's coming up my nose. That's when you dove for cover. You got into anything. You got behind a wall, you got into a basement or a house, or just hit the ground, because shrapnel, when it bursts, it goes all over. The only place for me to get cover was that manure pile, and I dove in that friendly manure pile. And a shell hit maybe 30, 40 yards in front of me, but Mr. Manure Pile did his job, and so I got out and dusted myself out, and of course we all smelled kind of bad because you didn't get to shower very much, you know. But the guy said, "Hey, Dick, you really smell today." So I said, "Well, I had a little incident happen. Things couldn't go through the hedgerows; they were too massive. So there was a Sergeant Cullen was a mechanic back at the beaches, and he said, "Well, maybe if I had some tusk or something and welded those on the tanks, maybe that'd work." So he was back at the beaches where there was a lot of steel and whatnot. So he kind of formed a couple of tusks, got a tank and put it on, and he tried it on a hedgerow and it went right through. And so then General Bradley came down and looked at it, and he said, "We're going to put these in all the tanks." Crossing. One of the most difficult times we had is in France when we crossed the Moselle River, and Germans were on the other side with their machine guns and whatnot. And we were trying to find a place where we could get across, and there was a little island in the middle of this river, and some of our guys got over and got to the island, but they couldn't get any further. And so we pulled back, and we went downstream and found a place that was easier crossing, and went there, and then we went back, and we thought those 6 guys and the officer, Lieutenant Giacobello was his name, they're surely gone. They're either dead or prisoners. But we went back to where we had initially tried to cross. There they were. They'd set up a little strong point, and Giacobello was a very brave guy, and he if the Germans would try to come at him, he'd just fire up the machine guns and act like he was in charge, and you know, he was facing hundreds of Germans, but they didn't know what he had, except that they said, "Gee, it must be a regiment at least back there," but it was just 6 guys. So we got on the boat and came home. So we were one of the first units to come home. And so I got home, and the parents were glad to see me. My friends that were home were glad to see me. The neighbors were glad to see me. It was just a real uniting time in our lives. And they had a thing called the GI Bill. So, which you could go to college, you go to a trade college, and if you were mechanically inclined, you could learn to be a machinist or a model maker or something like that. My dad said, "Don't leave Columbia Steel. It's part of U.S. Steel. It's one of the largest corporations in the United States for a little dinky toy company." Well, the toy company was Mattel. So I went to Mattel when it's a $6 million company, and I was in charge of recruiting the day I walked in. And we just stuffed the place with talent. We came out with a Barbie doll, a walking doll, a talking doll, all those things, and the company just grew. And in the meantime, I got married and started out a family. I have 6 daughters and 2 sons. So my wife was very efficient, and she was a medical technologist at MedTech, and worked for a while, then of course took care of the family because I was working all the time. And I stayed there for 18 years and ended up as vice president of Mattel.
Does it rain?